has been arrested for inciting hatred against the ruling regime on social media. Issa Faraj is a prominent human rights lawyer. The government's banned expressing sympathy for Qatar both on and offline. It's a punishable offence with up to 5 years in prison and a fine. Let's get more on all of this now. We're joined by Shafiq Gabra, Professor of Political Science at Kuwait University. The Bahraini government arresting this lawyer for trying to file a case saying that the sanctions against Qatar are affecting people, which we heard from the United Nations human rights chief also saying the same thing. What's going on here?
Well, we discussed this morning, and as you can see, it's also part of a constant attempt to show disrespect to public opinion and to the rights of people to express themselves and to speak their minds. And that's quite an example of the lack of ability to show logic. I mean, when you are logical, when you are clear, you don't need these measures. And in a more open, I mean, how are you going to fight terrorism if you silence people? Isn't terrorism a result of silencing people? Isn't it a result of human rights violations? Whether in the region at large or in any constant when you, I mean, why did the West achieve on a conclusion that they have to respect human rights and to respect the right of people to express sympathies and ideas? They realize it's much easier to do that rather than silence and then end up in instability and end up in anger, frustration, and at a certain level, terrorism and violence.
Yeah, which is what we heard from international lawyer Saad Jabbar earlier, saying that, you know, these nations are very much using the sort of guise of fighting terrorism to actually just silence opposition, silence dissent.
And as we can see, whether we look at the Yemen war, whether we even look at the war against ISIS, you end ISIS, but nobody's really talking about the human toll. And how does this end up contributing to that level? But yes, I agree with you. A big chunk of the rubric or the slogan, fighting terrorism, mixes freedom of speech, expression. I mean, are the Muslim Brothers terrorists? The answer is no. There could be a line of a certain group, more extremist. But the Muslim Brothers, as we know them in Morocco, in Kuwait, and elsewhere, are not terrorists, even those who are all over in Egypt, etc. So why add terrorists to your definition? Freedom of speech, they are putting it under the rubric of, or under the title of terrorism. Difference of opinion is under terrorism. Opposition is under terrorism. Peaceful means of expression are under terrorism. Someone who makes a strike becomes a terrorist. That will only keep creating new terrorists. And if the US doesn't understand this, and if the world doesn't come to this conclusion, then it will never be able to win against terrorism.
For now, the US doesn't seem to be understand it if it is, in fact, taking sides with Saudi Arabia, which is, of course, backing, accusing Qatar, rather, of these very serious allegations of backing, funding terrorism. We've been hearing from the Qatari foreign minister a lot saying that, you know, show us the proof, let's talk about this. These allegations so far are not based in fact, and they are in fact baseless.
When you look at Hamas, let's say, is Hamas a terrorist organization? If you're supporting Gaza's electricity, if you're supporting within the United Nations, within the world structure. So the whole idea of terrorism is a way to settle disputes. So who is the terrorist in the end? And then we give this definition of terrorism based on, you're my opponent, then I would say you are a terrorist. But, well, what about state terrorism in the region? Israeli terrorism. Anybody talk about that? What about state terrorism, violence against civilians and violence against the opposition and imprison the opposition? What about that kind of state terrorism in the region? Nobody's talking about that, and that's the core issue. It's state terrorism
that this crisis is addressing. Mr. Gabra, thank you very much for that for now. Thank you. Still